Okay, thank you for coming everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. Item 1 on our agenda, any apologies for absence? I've received no apologies. We don't have Councillor Smith present at the moment, but hopefully he may show up. So, okay, but for now, item 2, any declarations of interest? No. Okay, then item 3 is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday 12th of December 2023. All those who are present, if you're happy to approve those minutes, raise your hand. Okay, and abstentions? Okay, no one against. Fantastic, those are noted. And then we move on to item 4, which is our 2023-24 quarter 3 overview report for the Fit for Purpose theme. Councillor Smith, welcome. Okay, and I'll hand over to Stuart and Owen. Okay, over to you.
Shall I just go straight to the procurement pipeline? Yeah, okay. So if members can turn to page 38, we're going to look at the procurement pipeline item first. Obviously, members will be aware there's been a lot of development in that area over the last sort of year, 18 months. We had the member training session on the 11th of January, and we had the first meeting of the procurement subcommittee last week before, can't remember because time flies, but very recently. Yes, thank you. So this sets out, generally it's green. What we are now doing is really working on that, embedding those processes that we've put in place over the last year. We'll do the annual procurement report at one of the first meetings in the municipal year, like we did last year, that sets out procurement activity, some of the challenges, and then represents the procurement pipeline and the contribution for the forthcoming year. What we're doing at the moment is really working towards establishing what that procurement pipeline is, just doing the rounds again to make sure it's as robust as possible, and we'll present that to scrutiny committees again like we did this year to the first meetings of those, along with Councillor Headley and Councillor Gascoigne, to see what procurements that subcommittee would want to review in more detail. Alongside that, we're doing that resource planning to make sure obviously that we've got the service resources aligned and the procurement resources aligned to support those procurements that are on that procurement pipeline. And that's really well with that whole procurement arena.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on this item? Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take the slight change from the usual procedure. We're going to take questions item by item, so we're not kind of jumping from subject to subject at the end. So, and no questions on procurement pipeline? No? Okay, then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll run through them then in the order that they're presented, having dealt with the procurement pipeline. So, members, if it's all right to take you back to page 20 in your agenda pack, we'll start with case management. Chair, if it's okay, I'll cover case management and member inquiries, given that they're a very similar project, and then I'll pause for questions and then we'll move on. So, members of the Commission will remember that case management covers our move to handle complaints, compliments, freedom of information requests, subject access requests using our new Dynamics platform. The technical aspects of that project have completed in that those processes are now available on the new platform and they are operational. We are learning the lessons from that implementation and because of that we have deferred the benefit realisation, the cost efficiency, as is highlighted in the on page 20 in your papers there, until such time as the processes are fully embedded. Part of that case management project that we wanted to separate out to give it greater visibility was dealing with member inquiries, and that's detailed on page 22 of your agenda packs. So member inquiries has been discussed at this group a number of times, and we have refined the process for dealing with member inquiries. At the last meeting of Overview and Scrutiny Commission, we gave a short demonstration about changes to the reply functionality that we'd amended in the system. And members of Scrutiny were broadly supportive of those changes. So what we then did was we went away and we conducted a full end-to-end test on that change to the process and the technology. And Chair, I'm happy to report that we are now ready to switch that on for all members across the council. So it would be my proposal to write to members that they are aware of that change, and that I anticipate will improve elected members' experience of the member inquiry process. The second aspect that we discussed the last time that this item came to the Commission was to pilot an option for members whereby on the councillor page where you've got your photos, underneath that you've got a contact link, and for most members that takes you to an email address, and we were discussing piloting for some members that link taking you to a form that the resident would then complete. So we have again conducted our full range of tests on that form, and we are ready to offer that to members if they wish. I would suggest as a pilot to begin with, rather than trying to go across the whole council. And Chair, I'll be looking either tonight or following on from tonight, if the Commission so supports it, to seek volunteers from members to take part in that pilot. So just to be clear, that pilot would be on the web page where your photos all are. There's a little link underneath it. If a resident clicks that link to raise a query with you, it would take them to a form. The form would say, what's your name, what's your query, when do you want it resolved by, that kind of stuff, and then the information would come through to you. Chair, I'll pause there because that's the first two, and then take questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Just on that last topic there, assuming that someone does click on the link or opt to take part in that trial where you have the link for the contact form, presumably that still doesn't stop residents contacting us directly by email. So for anyone who's got our business cards with our email address on it, it's not exclusively, that doesn't become the exclusive mode of contact.
No, it doesn't, and indeed, from a member's point of view, your experience wouldn't change dramatically. What you would receive would be an email into your inbox. The difference would be that that form is automatically also populating our CRM system, our dynamic system. So it just means that we can reconcile the queries together where you get duplicates. That's the real benefit of it. As members will be aware, sometimes member inquiries are raised with a number of councillors at the same time. So that's the real benefit of it, it's the coordination. But it wouldn't close down any other channels that you currently use, no.
Okay, so that's reassuring. And just on, as you sort of said, we've kind of done member inquiries to death sort of over the course last year. So, but I do want to sort of offer some praise to officers on this, because I have noticed a real marked improvement in the response times and so on. So just want to say thank you for that. Just referring to page 21, I was concerned about the percentage of FOI responses that were currently outside of the 20-day deadline, particularly because obviously we do have a duty to respond to freedom of information requests in good time, and where we've got a target of only 2% outside of that period, we're currently operating for the year at 32, just over 32%. So that is quite concerning. So what action's being taken to remedy that? And if there's a kind of a plan of action in train, then maybe it's something that we could bring back and look at a later date in more detail.
Thank you. There has been a decrease in FOI response, as you can see from the performance. This was taken to the SLT governance review of the report, and directors all agreed that all resolution will be treated as a priority, and all directors will now be copied in as part of escalation and help us navigate where FOIs tend to be more than one department. So how we work together to ensure resolution. Quite often it's because they're quite complex or require a lot of time. So we have a mini task force to review that, a bit like how we dealt with the complaints process and members' inquiries. We're reviewing that process end to end now.
Okay, that's good. And so what's the core cause for these? You say it's because it's possibly where multiple departments are involved and so on. Is that generally what's driving it?
Yeah, generally they're very, very complex, requiring multiple data, generally quite historic data as well. And they're not always straightforward, so they won't be necessarily very clear about where they are. There has been some issues around understanding and training about where they need to go to at the first point of contact, and we're working through that training as well. But they generally are more complex. However, we do have a plan of action to make some improvements there. Kind of works across directorates, so we're aligning roles and responsibilities to be very clear about who needs to chase at what point. But with directors' overview, support and copying in, I think there'll be a vast improvement by the next quarter.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that. Okay, on the same page, the number of complaints received, or general complaints received by the council. I've looked at the kind of the history of this, and it seems the number that we had in October is kind of like the baseline figure of generally in like the 300s. It's what we kind of see throughout the year. Obviously, there was a big jump in November and then a bigger jump up in December. It might be very easy to sort of wonder why that could be. However, I did actually go back and I looked at last year's figures for this period and realised that actually that kind of curve is almost perfectly replicated. We always see a big jump in November, big jump in December. It is still slightly higher this year than it has been in previous years. But I was just wondering, do we know why we see that pattern? What particular issues is it that's coming up at that time of year that's driving, aside from the obvious, that's driving complaints?
So last year's peak was the implementation of the new dynamic system. So it gave us much bigger overview and oversight in one place of what performance was. So that was the peak. Now that could have been a reflection, as you say, of normal December peaks and demands, but we do believe that it was because we were centralising, we were putting everything that had been everywhere into one place. And last year I looked back at the performance and it was very steady in terms of the top 5 normal, so there wasn't a particular peak in one service last year. This year the peak is very much in regards to the new waste service, and also in terms of what came in. A customer can raise a complaint and they choose to raise a complaint through the portal. Now what happens with those, they come in and they get recorded, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't reassigned to a service request. So we're going to do some data analysis around that. So if it hasn't been reported to us previously, that complaint may not be a complaint because the customer can choose that that was a complaint. So we may go back, and you've probably seen that with members' inquiries where I know we didn't like the wording around invalid request, and we're trying to be a lot softer with the wording, but that's where we're raising service requests. So whilst there was a very big spike, some of those are service requests, about 20% of those, we believe.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I've got Councillor Gascoigne.
Thank you, Chair. Could you give me a bit more detail about how it will improve the experience of councillors, the changes that have been brought in?
So there are sort of 2 changes that I was outlining in the member inquiries project. So the first one is when we first launched the new process, we had a no reply email exchange with you, and that meant that it was essentially one-way traffic. We were receiving the inquiry from you, but you weren't able to interact with us using that same channel. So we've listened to members' concerns about that, and we've changed that channel. So what will happen now is that you will submit an inquiry using the same channel the same email address that you've used before, and then if there's a query about it or a conversation about it online, you will be able to go backwards and forwards, and the system will recognise your original email in, and therefore it will automatically log it. So if we've got 4 queries on the same topic, or you've got 4 queries from the same person on the same topic, the system will recognise those as joined queries. So you'll be able to cross-reference them. So A, you'll be able to converse with the system and therefore the officer to whom it's been assigned. And the second thing is members were unhappy at the kind of anonymity of the response to them. So we've changed that as well, so that you now know who you're corresponding with and the duplicate queries are joined up. So that was the first big change and benefit to you, Councillor Gascoigne, in terms of the system. The one with the form is simply that you will then receive a query in a structured format. So it would be the same format always. So you would always know the name, you would know where the query is coming from, you would know the details of the query set out in a certain layout, and it would be automatically taken into the dynamic system. So it would take out one stage if we could get that to be uniformly used. And I appreciate that's a bigger change, hence the suggestion to pilot it. So over time, that one will reduce traffic.
Thank you for that. On the idea of the form, my only concern with that is the potential for it to off-put certain residents. Sometimes they just want an email and say, this is my problem, please help me, send. And if they've got to go through the potentially tedious process of putting a huge amount of detail in, then they might be like, do you know what, forget it, I give up. So you did mention that there is still the facility for them to skip the form altogether. So therefore, would that happen during the pilot phase, i.e. they can either click to fill in a form or they just email you directly? And then how long-winded is it potentially to fill out this form? What kind of details are we asking from residents when they reach out to us? Thank you.
So I'd want to engage with those members who we can who we can win as volunteers for the pilot about the terms of the pilot. What I'd ideally like to do is I'd like to have a group of members who are using the current way of working, a group of members who are using just the form, and a group of members who are using both, so that we can compare and contrast their experiences and the experiences of the resident who are raising the inquiries with them. So that would be my ideal position. Kind of depends on how many members volunteer to be involved in the pilot. On second term, in terms of the form itself, we did demo a short version of it at the last meeting. It's quite minimal. It's name, a reference like your address, and then you type in some text as to what your inquiry is and press submit.
Okay, Mr. Sparks.
I think we would obviously keep the form as minimal as possible. I think sometimes even residents do, bash off a quick email, as you say. Sometimes we then have to go back to them. They don't supply enough detail, which can cause more frustration. So hopefully we're collecting that key information that will stop that having to happen, which will probably be beneficial longer term as well. So we're mindful of both sides of that.
And sorry, just to clarify on that point, presumably whatever they put into that form, when they send the email to us as councillors, we would see everything that's in that form. Is that correct? Okay, great. Thank you very much. All for me for now.
Thank you. One little follow-up on that. Will there be the ability for residents to add like attachments or anything like that if they want to add a photograph or something of an issue?
I'll take away and check that. I can't see why they wouldn't be, but I will check that because I don't know that level of detail tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Adam Weaver.
Just a quick question. I just wondered if there was a drop-down list that would allow the resident to categorise or to inform us what the call was, but based on categories that were set up in a lookup list.
So I think that's the kind of experience that if we run a pilot, we'd be looking to garner from the members who'd used it and any resident feedback we can get. So at the moment we've designed it to be as simple as we can. Name, reference like address, text to enter your issue. If over time we were able to ascertain that actually it would add benefit just to have a drop down and you pick, then we'll certainly consider adding that. At the moment all we're trying to do is to get the resident inquiry to you through a system as easily as possible. So part of this is about running a pilot so that we can develop it further.
Thank you. But I think it will be helpful to be able to categorise the calls so that we can run statistics on it. We don't have to so that we can run, yeah.
I just think it's what I want to try and use the pilot for is to balance the experience of the resident completing the form, so to make it as simple as possible, and the benefits to the council in terms of analysing what comes in. So whichever experience works best as we pilot it is what we'll try and roll out thereafter. So I'm just trying not to narrow down our options too early on. Certainly, when we use drop-down lists and we categorise, that does help to improve the quality of the data that we're able to run and therefore give back to you. I'd agree with you.
Okay, Councillor Davies.
I was miles away. I had sometimes I receive emails that are in already kind of like a format form, like a
Right to them.
huh?
Right to them.
Yeah, was that from Right to Them? Is it? Yeah. Oh right, okay. I thought the council had already developed it. You've answered my question. Next.
Easy one, that one. Okay, so next we've got Councillor Yacoub.
Thanks. So I've got questions on 2-3 different things. So first of all, on the FOI responses, my experiences with the FOI system is that a lot of the times it is quite a manual process. So like even something as, simple as redacting or going through different documents, I've been told that it's, physically a person that sits there, reads it all, and then another person that verifies it. So it's quite obviously a long manual process. Is there a way, or have we looked into ways to streamline it or make it a little bit more digitized to help improve on how long it takes us to respond to FOI requests? The second question I had was in regards to the complaints, and on the subject of waste. When a resident submits a missed collection report, is that then logged as a service request or as a complaint? And if a resident wants to make a complaint about persistent missed collections, then is it that they have to go onto the complaints page and very specifically put that in, as opposed to just keep putting in missed collections? I think that's important because when we talk about how many complaints we have had in November and December, they might not, they reflect complaints, and a lot of those complaints will probably be about missed collections, but also there's probably a lot of service requests that have been logged as service requests but are also more missed collections. So I think it's important to just note that. And then in regards to the form we spoke about for members' inquiries, I understand why it's being pitched as a possible solution. What I want to know is something like, for example, the text of how much a resident could put in there, because sometimes it's a really simple email and sometimes a resident likes to go into more detail. Will the text be limited? And that's, I think, and also the other thing is, how will we as members be able to respond? So because they've come through a form system, would their email address and everything be visible for us to then manually reply to them from our email? Because obviously we won't be responding through a system, we'll just be responding as normal.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to share some of these out, if that's all right, Chair. I'll start with redacting, and I'll pick up the form word limits, and Chana can pick up the complaints and service requests elements of your questions, if that's okay. So we have been exploring the potential for automation with redacting. We have yet to complete that exploration. There are products out there on the market that are very clever in terms of helping us to redact. You are correct, Councillor, at the moment, redacting, particularly in the FOI, ones that the more complex and longer ones, is a manual process for us, and it will be just for the time being. But please be assured that we are looking at what the market has to offer with redaction. I'm I'm actually unaware of there being a limit on the form. I will go and check that to see if there's a word limit in there. Again, I would suggest that's something that if we were to pilot it with a number of members, we could then look at what's the average length of words we're getting. Do we need even to put a limit on them at all? And would that add any value or not? I'll let Shanna pick up the complaint versus service request. At the moment with the form, it will present to you as an email, so you would still be able to see that traffic and you should be able to interact with the system back through in the same way that I was trying to explain about the no reply changes that we'd made. So the template, if you like, or form, is for the resident to structure their response. You still receive it as an email. I'll let Shanna pick up on the complaints.
And in terms of the complaints, it is very clear that if it's a complaint about multiple, they can make a complaint and they need to go through the complaints process. If it's a service request, then there is report function where they can report that. Just to reassure you though, we are doing some work around, even if someone hasn't complained, we're matching together multiple missed so we can learn from that. Why has it been missed? Is it a duplication, or actually is it multiple missed because of issues with the location or how it's been routed? And we're working very quickly to mitigate that moving forward. So just to reassure you, we are matching that data.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Smith.
Can't exactly miss me. I was under the impression, if I start off with this first question, that once an FOI is completed and before it's sent to the resident, that the leader glances over it and signs off on it being sent to the resident. Is that correct?
That is incorrect.
Well, I got that from a previous leader. I'll chase that up with them, but that answers the question. But a lot of what we've heard is phantom armies, really. My neighbour, 2 doors down, there's the ward councillors from where I am actually residing. They paid for a special collection first week of December. It's still sitting there. Still sitting there since the 1st of December. They've been on to me like, can you have a word? Yep, I've sent emails. My last email from council inquiries is, it's all been collected. Well, I'm going to call William Shatner so he can do his next episode of Weird or What. Basildon Council says it's collected, but it's still there. Must be an occult thing. But in reality, that's the all. Clayle Road, from Kingswood down to the library in Vange. I've reported numerous occasions of piles of black sacks, and they are still there. There's a recycling bin at Kingswood Playgroup Centre. I had a crime meeting there, 3rd Saturday of this month. I reported the rubbish 2 weeks previous, and it was still sitting there. This is where the council inquiries is getting the problems. It can't be that when a council emails telephones, it should be like top priority, 2 days tops, to pick up that rubbish. And then residents come back at us. If it's not, it's a different resident, and you get all this multiplication. Yes, you have your technological malarkey, but it is still, like I say, a phantom army. He's not clearing the rubbish. Today, I've had a picture of a resident, and I can show any member here if they disbelieve me. Right, and in a black wheelie bin, a rat. We've got to get on top of this before the weather starts warming up. It's getting serious. Now, at previous meetings, we've spoken about the telephony system for council inquiries. If you get Megan, she's brilliant. That's how it used to be, the service. But naturally, Megan will have a day off. She's entitled to a lunch break. And it would be helpful to have a second person, because if I'm leaving the new part coming to the new Nevermain ward, like Swanstead, Megan wasn't in that time. So I kept ringing, no answer. So luckily I had a scrap bit of paper and pen, and I was going there like Gambleside, 80 black sacks, 2 dump-style American fridge freezers. And when I came past there 2 weeks later, still there. I think I might have a bet of the leader, it might still be there 2 weeks from now. That's the problem residents got. You can call it a customer service request, you can call it a complaint, but as you call the residents customers, if they were truly customers of this council, they wouldn't pay their council tax. This council is failing on picking up the rubbish, and equally failing to enforce against the people who are too idle to dump to deal with their rubbish correctly and choose to dump it on our streets. Hence why there's increase in rats. So that's what I would say. We need the street cleaning teams residents shouldn't even have to contact a councillor. They should be able to make that complaint online and it is removed. I don't mind dealing with it, but you don't elect someone who's going to, you could put on your election leaflet now, vote for me and I'll get the council to pick up the fly tipping in your street. That wasn't a thing you could have said 2 years ago, but now it is. Got to get the refuse picked up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I think we need to make sure that what we're discussing here is the mode by which the councillor the inquiry is then routed to the relevant person department. Now, what you're describing is they're getting that request. It's then not being done. So that's not necessarily a failing of the councillor inquiry system. It's a failing of at the end point of the actual work being done. But again, we have this issue of, Councillor Smith's right, because I've had similar examples of this, where I've had a response saying this has been done, case closed, and it's clearly not, and we need a way of kind of resurrecting that inquiry and saying no, it isn't case closed. There should be like a button that sort of says reopen or inquire or But at the moment, just a blank message saying this has been dealt with, this is what's been done, kind of just cuts us out of the loop, and then we have to kind of go back to square one. So, is there anything that's being done to address that?
So as of Monday, we already had a tactical team in process. So as part of the delivery of the project, it's a very big change, and we have all worked very, very closely together. But from Monday, we co-located some of the customer services team, including members' inquiries, including complaints, and where we're picking up service requests at the depot alongside the dispatcher team. And we are working together to identify where mist have been reported closed, and they haven't gone, for what reason. And one of the biggest reasons is around contamination. So we're going to do better work about educating back the customer of why we didn't collect it. So when we're closing it, there has to be a reason code. So we're very clear to say, unfortunately, we can't, or we're going to come back at a certain time, rather than just a closure. So we completely recognise your feedback. Some of it has been, human error and mistake, which we are picking up. So in terms of if you are getting any of those, please come back to us through members' inquiries. You'll be pleased to know Megan is down there, and she's on our task force. But we need to learn from this and identify. Our biggest issue at the moment is giving reason codes and not codes back to the customer, but a formal response. So was the bin open? Has it been refilled? Has it been contaminated? Or whatever reason why we couldn't collect it at that point, and if we're going to, or if we're not going to, what options are available?
Yeah, I think that's vital. The resident and us, if we're reporting as well, we need to have some sort of feedback. As I say, if something hasn't gone as we expect, none of us report rubbish that doesn't exist. We report it because we want something to be collected. So to then be told, well, it's not there. Well then, why couldn't you find it? Did you go to the right place? Was there a problem with the address? Was it not accessible? That's the information we need, so we can go back to our residents and explain what's happening. And we've put a lot of emphasis on education. Education on this, making sure people know how to use the waste system. And if we're just saying haven't done it, couldn't collect it or whatever, and we don't know why, then it kind of defeats the object. Councillor Smith, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor.
Thank you. You may accuse me of straying off the point, but I think it's duty of care as we're on this subject. Last Thursday, I was round Ewing Gardens of Wesley Green. The dustman had been 2 hours previously with the black wheelie bins, and I see two individuals, a young lady and a young gentleman, placing them red and white intimidation stickers, as I call them, on top of the black wheelie bins, like, "You have not recycled your food waste, we come get you," very Gestapo-esque. I found out the stickers have been funded by county, but the staff are working for Basildon. So I just approached the two people very nicely and I said, "Do you work for the council?" Not English. They were very polite. But I'm concerned, as a duty of care, that someone somewhere in the borough might just snap because their refuse has not been collected and they've got 2 weeks' worth of stinky nappies, and there's someone putting that sticker on the bin that looks quite intimidating, and it's meant to sound intimidating, and they could approach them, and if they've got English, if they can't speak English, And I asked ever so nicely, didn't know who it was. And to say to me, no English, I've got a duty of care for them because an irate resident could go for them, and it's not fair to them. So why are we employing people who are not speaking English?
Okay, thank you for that impromptu audition for a reboot of a Lower Low.
It's a serious question because
it
it's a
is.
duty of care to people who we are paying for an agency.
It is. I don't want to put too much pressure on the officers here because obviously they're not here to answer for the waste team. So, you know, I understand you've put it on record, but as I say, you know, you're asking about operational questions about, you know, of the environmental team who are not here to give you those answers. So, I mean, if officers want to comment, you're more than welcome to, but I reckon.
What I would say is, if there is an issue with either the direct employment of any individual or of the letting of a contract for any service to do with the individual's ability to communicate, then it's incumbent upon us as officers to follow that up. So I thank Councillor Smith for raising it, and I will follow it up with the relevant service. You know, if it's direct recruitment, we have policies that govern our recruitment, and those include our equality and diversity policies. So we wouldn't necessarily preclude somebody from working for us for whom English is their second language, by any means, but it would be a requirement of them to be able to communicate effectively with residents. So there's a serious point that's been raised, Chair, and I will follow it up. Thank you.
Okay, if it's brief.
And can them sort of staff be given a panic button as well? Because I know my residents are very angry, and on a bad day I could see someone flipping at them.
So we have devices that we issue to staff, and again I can certainly follow up as to how those devices have been deployed with colleagues in the waste service.
Okay, Councillor Yacoub.
Okay, just to pick up on the point made earlier, I appreciate that, you know, some rubbish is contaminated and we need to do, you know, we need to actually conduct that educational process. However, I don't think it's acceptable for rubbish to sit there for 4 weeks because it's contaminated and therefore we're not going to be doing our job as a council and picking up, you know, and collecting the refuse. I just don't think that's acceptable. I'm really concerned that, you know, I understand that we need to educate, we need to, you know, maybe even put forward warnings or, you know, have a conversation with the resident, but to not pick up the rubbish and leave it there for weeks at a time, for it to contaminate the environment, that's causing a much greater issue that not just impacts the resident, but impacts the entire neighbourhood and estate. I just don't think that's acceptable at all.
Any further comments on that?
So Chair, I mean, if respectfully, I'd refer to the Chair's comments earlier. So this part of the update report is about the implementation of a complaints and inquiry system. The officers here tonight are not employees of the Waste Service, and indeed this scrutiny committee doesn't cover the operational delivery of waste. That is covered in a sister scrutiny committee. I'm happy to forward the queries and the comments that have been made by councillors tonight. I'm not in a position to be able to respond to those operational queries.
No, and I think not all of the concerns that have been raised are perfectly valid, and you know, I think we've all asked these questions at some point. But as I say, I don't want to put our officers under too much pressure here because this is obviously not their specific, you know, area of responsibility. But at the same time, you know, part of our remit as a scrutiny committee is fit for purpose. And you know, obviously, there is a question there as to whether our processes are meeting that criteria. Okay, so I think that's the last of the questions on this section, and I think we move on to the waste strategy implementation next.
Thank you, Chair. So there are two parts to this project that are being reported to the Overview and Scrutiny Commission this evening. The first is the transfer of how we deal with mist bins, which have been discussed, bulky waste, assisted bin collections, and so on. I'm on page 24. Page 24 of your agenda pack, councillors. So that project is titled Old to New CRM. So what we've done here is we've implemented a new Microsoft Dynamics CRM platform for dealing with a whole range of different inquiries, and that was what case management was about at the start of my presentation this evening, and that extends to the waste service. So at the same time as rolling out changes to the waste service, we're rolling out changes to how we gather and use the information that is collected. We have successfully implemented that change in that our new Dynamics system is now able to deal with requests that come through, for example, on missed bins. That means that we are able to reconcile duplicates when they come in, and there are many. As Shannon was explaining earlier, we can also start to interrogate, for example, on the complaints number, where those should more rightfully be service requests rather than complaints. And the new system enables us to do that. As that system, as those changes are embedded, we will then move to the second part of the project, which is set out on page 25, which is the procurement of an in-cab technology. So at the moment, what happens is that the member of the public or your good selves would raise a query. That would come through. As Shanna explained, we have co-located staff from the Customer Resolution Centre at the depot with staff from the service, and they will talk with each other and they will try and deal with the queries. So, for example, a missed bin. On page 25, there is a project there to extend that process so that we place in the cab of the vehicle itself technology which means that the supervisor is able to send an instruction directly to the cab in the truck to say you've missed a bin or some other such information, and it will have a number of other functions in it. It's important, Chair, that we embed the process first, that we make sure that we can receive the inquiry, that we can remove the duplicates, etc., before we launch the in-cab technology. And as the report outlines there, we've started the procurement process for that second stage of the project. And Chair, I'll pause there in case there are any questions before we move on.
Okay, Councillor Gascoigne.
Thank you very much for that. As someone who's very pro new technology, I'm very pleased to hear about this. Very interested to know how effective this is expected to be, and more importantly, the kind of cost savings we can expect from the deployment of either systems. Thank you.
So on the cost savings, obviously what we need to do is pilot it, and it should reduce demand across the board, and that will be obviously making the crews themselves more effective. They'll be able to go directly rather than being called back and collecting things, and also it should reduce obviously complaints and then that failure demand and calls to CRC. So we're looking to see how that will unfold. We need to do that as part of testing and part of specking. We do think it will have significant savings. I wouldn't put a figure at the moment because we need to actually understand what it's going to mean and how it's actually going to work. And what we will do, we'll pilot it and it will grow over a period of time. But we do expect savings to be significant.
As soon as you said less complaints, my ears pricked up with delight. I think that's a lofty goal for I think any of us here, actually. If we can get less complaints about missed waste collections, that is a definite plus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 questions. Will this include spillages from those, I say it sarcastically, wonderful recycling bags where everything just flies out of them? Not the sort of bag you'd want to use on a bank job.
Sorry, did you have 2 questions, Councillor?
That was question 1 about the spillages.
Shall I pick them both up, or do you want to do
If it's up to you, but the second question was, now this was saying the Alliance had it all pretty much wrapped up 3 years ago, and then of course there was a change of shop in May 21. Why has it taken so long to get to this stage of NCAD technology? Because it was sold to us that for every time a bin was reported missed, it generated 13 bits of paper. Why has there been almost like a 3-year gap, please?
Chair, if it's okay, I'll respond to the second point first. So you are correct, Councillor Smith, in that we did pilot in-cab technology a few years ago. At the time, we found that we were premature in trying to roll that out because we didn't have the processes in place whereby the resident could complain and we would capture it in the way that we now can to feed the in-cab technology. So whereas we were able to successfully implement the hardware in the cab, we were not able to successfully fully implement all of the data coming through. So we paused that activity and we instituted the project which I've just updated you on, which is the movement to the new Microsoft platform. And now that we have successfully completed that, we can go back to the in-cab technology with a greater level of confidence around the sorts of benefits that Owen was outlining just now. So that's why we decided to pause on in-cab. You are quite right. We did have it as a project a couple of years back. So thanks for that point. I mean, it's difficult for me to comment. I'm not an operational manager in waste about the spillages aspect that you raised. But what I can confirm is that the system will be able to record complaints and be able to pass that through on a whole range of different aspects to do with the delivery of the service. And I would imagine that will include that sort of instance.
Okay, any follow-up on that? Okay, I think that's everything on this item. So if we can move on.
Okay, so we're going to move on to page 26, please. And this is the housing management system replacement. So this is a significant project for the council. As members will be aware, the council has a large housing stock, and with that large housing stock there come significant housing management demands. Our current IT system is end of life and towards the end of the contract and support, and therefore we are looking to go through a procurement process for a replacement. That procurement process will include revisiting the processes that are used by the staff, the opportunities to improve the resident experience, as well as efficiencies in the council. And at present, we have done work to understand our requirements, and we have entered into a procurement process. That procurement process is ongoing at the moment. We are envisaging, given the complexity and the significance of this system, that we will need to ensure that there is a continuity of business between the old or current system that we're working with and the new or replacement system. And therefore, we are entering into discussions which are commercially sensitive discussions with the current provider around an extension. Chair, I'll pause at that point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know Stuart Young can't exactly breach the rules around the tendering, but with what Fujitsu's done to our posties, it would be regrettable we give them any more of taxpayers' money. While they can bend, twist and bend around the rules and bang up innocent posties, I don't think it's appropriate we use taxpayers' money to give Fujitsu another copper coin of public money.
Are they on our sort of list of suppliers?
We'll follow the normal robust procurement process, and that's probably as much as we can probably say. But we'll obviously invite tenders and they'll be evaluated appropriately.
Okay. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. It says in key milestones, exercise closes the 22nd of Jan 2024. So that's obviously a few days ago. They were received and a decision is being made. Can I ask how many submissions there are? Is that commercially sensitive or... Anyway, yeah, I'll leave that there.
It would be commercially sensitive. What I can share with you is that we've extended that period. So we're not yet. This was written and printed up before we took that decision to extend. So we're not yet at that stage. So I can confirm that to you. Although once we reach that stage, yes, it would be a commercially sensitive discussion that we would need to hold in private.
Okay, Councillor Gascoigne.
So on page 26, under risk, issue and cost, they're all on red. I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on why they're red, because in principle, replacing the system seems like a sensible idea, but why are there so many reds here? Thank you.
So, as I was saying in the introduction to this particular part of the report, Councillor, this is a significant system for us. It's a large part of the housing services delivery. At the moment, we believe that for the purposes of ensuring business continuity, we will want to have a discussion with the current provider around an extension. That creates a risk to us because it creates a risk to the business continuity, because that continuity is dependent on the success of that discussion or negotiation. That covers the red risk under the heading risk, which is basically the narrative that's in there. Under the issue, under the red risk, which is under issue, that is simply reflecting that we are at an early stage in the procurement process, and as is normal at that stage, a project would show either amber or red because we haven't fully mapped out the implementation stages and dates to get to a successful implementation. I would expect, as you will see on some of the other projects we cover this evening, that those then turn to ambers and greens as we get a greater degree of certainty once we're further along the procurement process. And in relation to cost, because we will be in what will be a commercially sensitive conversation with the current provider, and we haven't yet finished procuring for a replacement, we have a degree of tolerance around the cost, and therefore we want to register that as a red risk at this time.
So thank you for that. I mean, a lot of what you said kind of more feels a bit more like amber than red, but I appreciate why they had to put there. The one you mentioned for the risk, there possibly could be a challenge with getting extension to the existing contract. My understanding was that when you do these procurement exercise and you issue a contract, built into that is also the ability to extend. It's usually quite a straightforward process. Is that also true in this case, or is this a contract that's been put up where there wasn't a contingency put in place for extending the contract? Thank you.
We've already used that provision.
So this is an extension on the extension, as it were. Okay, fine. All right. Well, thank you for that.
Okay, got no further speakers on these items, so if you'd like to continue on to the next. Okay, do we have... Yep, Councillor Gascoigne.
Just a very quick one, and it's kind of related to the previous one as well. Just both of these systems will presumably give us positive cost savings and efficient improvements to the efficiency of our service. Is that correct?
Yeah, legal use the current system. This is really a fairly routine upgrade to the process, but it'll help maintain the current efficiency levels and improve it slightly. But they use the system ready as sort of more of a change and upgrade. It's not a fundamental change the way they operate.
Councillor Adamowiwa.
Yes, I was just wondering, because this is a case management system, are there any other case management systems within the council, and why aren't we just using the same case management system for the different things?
So that's a good question. Thank you for raising it. When we went through the requirements for the legal case management system, we did look at whether it would be able to be used for other services. And as you'll appreciate, the legal service has a very particular set of needs for the types of cases it has. We do think there might be potential for it to extend in the future. Say, for example, if you were going to look at employment cases, sometimes those are of a similar ilk to legal cases. So we will look at opportunities to extend as and when the opportunity arises. We were happy with the spec that we've used with the legal case management system, being fit for purpose for legal with the potential to extend beyond that if required. We weren't at the stage in the council where we were requiring a wholesale case management replacement for a number of services. Beyond, of course, the item that we started this evening with, which was the generic complaints, compliments, FOIs, CRC function.
I'm just wondering if all these systems are integrated or are they just standalones?
So another good question. In 2020, the council approved an ICT strategy, and part of that strategy was that we would move to an environment where we bought systems that were joined up together. Our predominant aim with that is to work off Microsoft as a platform, and that is our preferred platform for technology. Quite a few of the systems that we've talked about this evening are either Microsoft systems or they are systems that talk with that Dynamics platform. And so our ICT strategy is that we build joined up data between those various elements of the same system or alike systems. So when we go through and we spec systems to go to the market, and housing management one is a good example of that, we will look for, can it join up with our existing suite of systems, either being a Microsoft Dynamics platform or being something which is akin to it. So it's probably a long-winded way of saying yes, Councillor.
So is it going to be possible for the systems to share data?
Yeah, that is our strategic aim, is that we create a shared pool of data where it is possible and has benefit to the council in doing so. So for example, in the world that Shanna works in, she would have information about residents, and it would be useful if we were able to join up various issues that a resident might raise so that we've got one record of the resident and their various needs of the council. And that's what we are moving towards. There will be, to be completely transparent with you, there will be other systems and services where there is less immediate benefit to the council, and we would need to make a judgment call as to the cost of joining that data up versus the benefit of it.
Okay, I presume that will kind of lead into the data and insight strategy update as well, won't it? Okay, so next item is telephony, which I'm pleased to see is a sea of green.
So page 29, members, is the update on telephony. Now, I think it was Councillor Gascon that was raising earlier about the RAG ratings, the red, amber, green ratings on the projects. So members may recall, if we rolled back a few meetings, that this was a project that was showing amber and red. This is now a project that is showing green across the board, and that reflects the successful implementation of the new telephony platform, which has been specified, procured, tested, implemented, and is operational now. So, yeah, I'll pause there, Chair.
Okay, any questions on that? No. And yeah, Councillor Yacoub.
So just a quick question. It says here that it will, because it's coming to a close, it won't feature in any of these overview reports, which is fine. Given that it is a new system, it's just been implemented, will we be reviewing it as part of the scrutiny process within this committee at some point? Because I think it is important. It's the first point of contact for residents. It's a new system. I think it would be good for us to be able to do that in the future. I appreciate we can't do that anytime soon because it is a new system.
Happy to, Chair. We could put it on the work programme to come back to and pick a period of time to enable the council to use the system for a while, and then you could have an update report back.
Yeah, I don't think it's something we would bring back at the next meeting and say give it a bit of time to bed in, and we can get some get some proper data to then look at a later date. But yeah, we'll put a provisional date. Yeah. Okay, next item, please.
On page 30 of your agenda pack, councillors, is an update on the migration of our IT infrastructure from a hosted environment, that is racks with machines on shelving and lots of wires connecting them as servers, to a cloud hosted environment. Again, this was a project several meetings ago, Chair, where there would have been ambers and reds. I'm very grateful to the work of my colleagues in IT and in services for the hard work they've put in. A lot of this migration takes place out of business hours, so it's done over weekends and in the evenings to minimise the disruption to the resident. And as the update report provides you there, it's green across the board, having successfully migrated the council's major systems into a cloud environment. That in turn, Chair, has reduced our reliance on our current contract with NTT. That contract is coming to end of life, and we brought a report through Cabinet just recently where we were demonstrating some of the efficiencies that have been banked because of that migration activity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Don't have any speakers on this. Okay, so we'll move on, please.
Page 31 of your report is an update on the redevelopment of the website. This is an important project for the customer-facing aspects of the council. It is our shop front for many residents. We are undertaking the project in two phases. The first phase has completed, and Owen and I, as co-chairs of the Officer Programme Board, will receive a report at the next meeting that details the project completion for phase one. Phase one was to tidy up the pages that are currently on our website. So we have, like many organisations, accumulated a lot of pages on our website which are out of date and are inaccessible because they are in a PDF format. A PDF format does not enable residents to access that data in a format which would aid people who are visually impaired or who have hearing impairment in the respective accessibility mode. So we've been doing some work to take those pages down, to replace them, and to reduce the number of pages that we've got on the site. We've also been doing some work to improve the linkages between the pages on the site and to start to improve the search functionality on the web. So that's phase one of the web development. Phase two is a wholesale redesign of that web space. We are working towards a website which will be largely transactional in basis, because we recognise that a lot of residents who wish to engage with us wish to transact. They want to pay, apply, ask, complain, etc. They want to do an action. So we're rebuilding the website so that it focuses on those. Chair, that is a 12-month project. It's not a small project by any means, and I will continue to report progress to the committee to the Commission as we move through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that being a 12-month process. In my own experience in the private sector, a 12-month period for a redesign of a website would be pretty long period. So what is it that makes it such a particularly long design period for that? I'd imagine that as I say, a business who kind of wanted to set up online couldn't sort of say, right, okay, I'm going to set up today, but I'm not going to be able to actually do anything or sell anything for a year because I need to design my website. That's usually something that's almost comes off the shelf. So what are the issues that are leading to such a protracted design period? Because as has been mentioned, it for a lot of residents, it's the first port of call in their interactions with the website. We've said at the moment it's past its kind of sell by date in terms of design. So really, we want to get that up and running and modern sooner rather than later.
It's a good point, Chair. Thank you. So what we are proposing to do is we are proposing to switch on the improvements as we go. So when I talk about a 12-month project, I'm talking about until we've finished, not until we start to see the improvements. And what we're intending to do is we're intending to improve and redesign the website function by function. And if I was to explain that a function might be apply for something, pay for something, request something, and so on, we aim to switch those functions on as we design them. It would be much quicker to go and buy a website that does that. We would still need to do the work behind the apply button, pay button, etc., to make sure that the various council services which currently aren't aligned or designed to that way of working are redesigned, and that's the bit that takes the time. So at the moment we would have, say, services that might have a dozen different methods for paying for something. We need to end up with a single way to pay for something, a single route to apply for something, a single route to complain about something, and so on and so forth. So that when the resident uses that function, they're not then just simply redirected. They can actually do an end-to-end process on the website, and that's what the 12-month project is to deliver.
Okay, so that's reassuring. So just again to summarise what you're saying there, so I understand it right. We are not talking about we're going to sit down, we're going to put mock-ups and drawings of what it's all going to look like, and in 12 months' time we'll say, yep, we'll start building that. It's going to be a rolling process, and residents will start seeing an improvement. Before that period. Okay, Councillor Gascoigne.
Thank you, Chair. So just the, and forgive my sensitivity to colours here, but the risk being red, I was just wondering if you could give a bit more detail on that, and I wonder if it's really more of an amber than a red, but anyway, go ahead.
So we put the red on there because of the accessibility issue that I was explaining with the PDFs on the website. So as the risk outlines, we are required to maintain a website which has certain accessibility standards, and in phase one of this project we focused on trying to improve those areas, those pages which we believe did not meet those standards. We've been engaging with the government advisors that provide guidance on accessibility for websites, and we've been following their advice about trying to make those improvements. I would anticipate that the next time you have this highlight report, that will change to an amber, because the meeting that I was referring to that Owen and I look after will have met and will have received the project closure report, so we can then move on. But as at today, we haven't signed that off. So we'll leave it as red for this meeting. We'll probably see it come to amber next time.
Councillor Adamoiwa.
I just wanted to ask a question about the website. I was wondering if because we're talking, it's not just the front end, we've got the back end. So I just wondered what the back end was. Was it back ending into all the systems that you were talking about earlier, or is there a different system behind those?
Thank you, Councillor. So that's what the 12 months is for. So the 12 months is to ensure that when there's a function on the front end of the website, that it does have a proper process behind it, which is linking all the way through to the point of delivery in the back end system or the back end officer. And so my simple example earlier was, at the moment, if a resident wanted to pay for something, there might be more than one way of doing that, depending on what service they were engaging with. In the future, we would move so that back end has all been rationalised and there is a link through, so it's a seamless process from the front through to the finished article.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Yacoub.
Okay, thank you. So, got a couple of questions here. So, first one is, in terms of the website, it does sound like it's going to be quite a comprehensive project, and it has a lot of layers to it. Can we have a session in the future where we can understand the changes that are being made? So, like, to visually be able to say, this is how a resident can do X, Y, Z right now, and this is how they'll be able to do it in the future once we implement this or whatever, so we can then scrutinise that, because otherwise, right now, it's just, we're verbally telling each other what's going to happen. I've got something else in my head, you know, you've got something else in your head and it doesn't really translate. The other thing is, and I think obviously you've mentioned this in your report, that we're trying to improve the links, because one of the biggest issues I've experienced is, you know, you go to do something and then there's a link and then you have to select another link and then there's another link, and by the time you get to it, you'd think that a resident would pretty much give up. So what I'm understanding from what you've said is there's more of a transactionary website where it's all about, like you said, pay for something, do an action. So it's all about action based and being able to communicate with the council on these things in a really efficient way. What I want to know is, how will the website facilitate the link of the resident with the council in terms of being an empowered resident who knows what's going on? So, policies we discussed, the webcasting service, information on new changes. How will we prioritise that? Because that's something I don't want to get lost in the process. I understand the need of making it very, transaction based, but at the same time, just as an example, getting to the webcast, finding the very specific meeting, it's a long-winded process. Even when I do it, I have to sit there and go, meetings, this one, this date, and it's a really long-winded process. Is there a way we can make that more simple? And a follow-up from that is, I've been told that we have a limit on when we have the webcasting service, and we've got recordings of meetings, that they only stay on there for 6 months. And obviously I understand the meetings are quite large, and it's a lot to host on a website, but are there any kind of like reasons beyond that we do that? Because from my perspective, I think it would be really good to be able to go back, for a resident to be able to go back and look at past meetings if they wish to access them. So even if it's not on the website, is there another way for residents to be able to access that? Sorry, I know it's a lot of questions, but I'd rather just, get it out now and you can respond. The other thing I wanted to say was, you've said quite a few times there's more than one way to pay for something at the moment. Can you just explain that?
Okay, just before you come in, Mr. Young, I've got good news for you. Because this meeting, and for a number of weeks now, is actually being webcast on YouTube instead of through the previous provider. And once something's on YouTube, it's effectively available ad infinitum. So that 6 month limit, I believe, I would have, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I would have thought that was a kind of a storage limit that would to host the recordings. But obviously now it's on YouTube. It will be there to the end of time. Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, isn't it? So flip.
That's not temporary. That's the new solution.
That's our new solution, yeah, for webcasting. Yeah. So flippantly, I would say you can look in the years and decades ahead, back at this very evening.
Show your grandchildren. There you go.
Okay, so I'll leave it to the chair's discretion about having a session at some point in the future. My colleagues would be very keen to come to Scrutiny. We have come before. We came to the last meeting and one of my colleagues did a bit of a demo of some of the functionality, and we would welcome an opportunity to come as the project progresses and show you a bit more, if that would fit in with the work programme. And the issue about links and finding things, thank you for raising it. It was remiss of me, Council, not to mention it before. So in addition to the transacting part, one of the things we want to do is to improve, change quite dramatically actually, the search function in the web. So we want links or using a menu to disappear as something that residents have to do. We want to create a search function which is powerful enough that you type in what you want and it takes you to where you want to be. At the moment, it would be fair to say that search function doesn't do that on our website, and there's lots of technical reasons as to why that doesn't happen, and there's been a lot of advances with search functions that mean that we shouldn't be relying on links in the future. And then webcast duration, the chair's picked up on, and ways to pay. So I didn't mean currencies and things like that. I just meant that we've got more than one system at the moment in the council, so we want to rationalise that so that the customer experience is the same, regardless of which service you're trying to access.
Yeah, I knew you meant more than one system, but I'm just curious, what are the other systems? Because apart from calling up or doing it online, what else is available?
So it's what's happening in the background. So it's when you call up, or it's not always the same IT. There are more than one IT provider in the world of paying for things, and we've got more than one. So in the future, we want to rationalise that to one way. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I was talking about that, I had a future housing video on YouTube of a chimpanzee house and a cat, so if nothing changes, that may be the future. On a more sensible note, is it possible when you click on each ward, you actually see the maps for that ward? Not just some sort of, transparent blob. Because if you lived in Vange with the new wards, there is no Vange ward. Either Pitsea South East, St Martin's or Vange. People in Chapel North consider themselves to be Landonites. And they may contact yourself, Mr. Chairman, and you go, well, it's Landon Park. Say, well, there's a park near me and there's a dog done a big thing where everyone walks. Can you get it cleared? So I think it would be helpful to have some proper clear maps. You've got the same problem in Pitsea behind us. Our colleague Councillor Edley, who covers Billericay West. And I'm sure there's bits where people might say, well, I'm near enough to the town centre and that. Surely you can help me out. And I'm sure you would, but it would be more time consuming for residents if they knew where to contact. Thank you.
We were talking just a moment ago about doing some sessions with members. Part of those can be to understand what requirements and functions might be beneficial and assist, so that you can inform us in terms of what we build. So I'd welcome the opportunity, particularly for my IT colleagues, to come along and have that sort of a debate, maybe a workshop or something like that, Chair, at your discretion.
Yeah. So, certainly, if IT colleagues are keen to come along, I wouldn't want to disappoint them. So, I'm sure we can arrange that. Councillor Smith.
Or failing that in the headline for the ward in brackets. So, never mind, you could put Kingswood, Vange Drive, Great Missley, and London Road, Vange. Save putting the map up. That's another one. I mean, the old St Martin's, that was easy. Gilgrove, Long Riding. And we've got the estates we have in Basildon that were built by the Commission. They have got pretty clear boundaries, and most of them lay entirely in whole wards.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. So, and the example you gave is one I have all the time. You're explaining where the boundary lies, as you say, where you've necessarily got a community that doesn't follow those kind of slightly opaque ward names. It can take a bit of explaining. So, yeah, it's certainly something we could consider. Councillor Yacoub.
Just to follow up on my question about how a resident interacts based on what the councillors are up to and from the perspective of them being well informed. One of the things I really dislike on the website is when you go to look for your councillor, it's A to Z, so it's alphabetically organised or it's organised by political party. Well, I think similar to what you've said about a map, it would be really good to have a map of Basildon. And then the way we have, we on the posters we have, right, where we just have like 2 Labour, 1 Conservative, whatever it is, and then you click into it and you can see your councillor, and then you click into their profile to see their contact details and all the information around their interest, register of interest and whatnot. I think that would be a much more effective way of doing it. It's just really simple and visual and just much better.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we're kind of rehearsing now what we do in a workshop, but yeah. I mean, it's a good suggestion. Maybe, Chair, with your indulgence, we'll arrange a workshop. You can feed in your requirements and suggestions, and then we can go and mock up what that could look like in the future.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, we'll get that put into the work programme, I think. Yeah. And as a councillor whose surname ends with or starts with W, I feel your pain about being listed alphabetically. So, okay, got our next item on data and insight strategy.
So on page 33 of your agenda packs, now councillors, we talked earlier about the IT strategy's aspiration to join up data so that we had a better view of the resident, and this is the strategy that tries to make that happen, along with just generally the better use and understanding of data in the council. So what we've done on this strategy is that we have joined up parts of the council where there are officers that use data, so we create a little network. We have introduced some training, an apprenticeship route through all the different layers of apprenticeships in terms of data. So that goes from people who use data simply to enter it into reports up to people who are doing some quite sophisticated analyses of that data and drawing insights from it. So we've got a whole range of development activities going on there. And allied to that, we've got the infrastructure developments that were being discussed earlier in terms of how we use dynamics. And Chair, I'll pause there.
Any questions on this item? No? Nice easy one for you. Moving on.
And then, Chair, if it's okay, I'll take page 34 and 35 and 36 together. Yep. So we've got the workforce strategy on page 34. Officers will be bringing forward to members a revised workforce strategy that will end up at Cabinet eventually, probably in a new municipal year. Chair, probably stopping off at this commission en route. So the current workforce strategy expires in 2024, and it's timely, therefore, to look at the demands on the council in the 4 or 5 years ahead and how our workforce is equipped to be responsive to those demands. Chair will be bringing forward some proposals on that. And then over the page on page 36 is the hybrid review update. And we had that as a substantive item at the last Commission meeting, Chair, so I'll not rehearse all of the debate that we had at that time, just to say that the review resulted in changes to our employment policy, some of the technology that we use, the layout of our floor within the council. And I'll pause there, Chair.
Okay, any questions on these items? Yeah, Councillor Gascoigne.
Just on the page 36, the hybrid review strategy, is that hybrid as in people who work from home as well as in the office, and then the potential cost savings that happen as a result of that? Just wanted to clarify.
So it is absolutely that. Hybrid recognises that the focus of the council will be on what the employee is carrying out for us and the quality of that work, and we will recognise that that work can be carried out both on site, remotely, and at locations as best fits the delivery of that business. That could be in a residence home, in a business environment, in the employee's home, or on site here or at the depot or a housing office. So that's what the scope of the hybrid policy is. The hybrid policy has returned a direct benefit to us in terms of how we use our space, and therefore what space is available to lease and rent out to other parties to use. And it has resulted in improvements in our recruitment campaigns, where when we test responses to our recruitment campaigns, we are gaining a greater number of applications because of the inclusion of hybrid, and we are able to cast our net broader in terms of people we are appointing, albeit, Councillor, that it remains in the contract of employment that the primary place of work for any employee is their allocated office space, be that the depot, this building, our satellite housing office, etc.
Okay, thank you very much. So next item is cyber security.
Okay, so councillors, we're on page 37. If I might respectfully suggest, this is probably the most important project of the whole bundle that you've got in front of you this evening, simply because it relates to so many business critical aspects of what this council delivers. And councillors will be aware who've received the cyber security training that my colleagues in IT offer, of the whole range of threats to the organisation from cyber security breaches. Cyber security is rated as the highest risk in our risk register at the council at the moment, and it is rated as the the most consistent risk over a period of time. And that is to recognise the quite dynamic environment or changing environment that we operate in online. So in response to that, this project recognises that we adopt a series of measures to protect the organisation at both a system level, at an individual level, the training and awareness of our officers, and the security measures that are built into the hardware that we use and the systems and software that we use. Councillors will be aware that, because we presented it at the last commission and one before, that we have been holding a number of workshops with members about the next steps on that cybersecurity journey, and the next steps include your good selves as elected members, because you are party to the data that is used within the council, and therefore you are also party to the risks that that data brings with it. It is the proposal of officers to bring a report to the last meeting in the municipal year of Cabinet to suggest a policy position for the use of equipment supported by training and help to be implemented from the new municipal year. And Chair, I would suggest that officers will be looking to hold one more workshop which will be extended to members of this commission and the Audit and Risk Committee ahead of bringing that report to Cabinet. And I'll stop there, Chair, for questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I attended one of those workshops and it was quite enlightening. So obviously we some time ago we did discuss this issue and the prospect of the council providing laptops or devices to members to kind of cut out that risk of cyber attack through using our personal devices and so on. So I was just wondering if you could kind of give me a bit of an update as to where we are with that, because at the time I think it was fair to say that this committee was fairly change averse. There were a number of concerns, and I know that you've kind of taken those into account. So I was just wondering if you could just kind of let us know where we stand with what are the options that are available to us that are going to kind of mitigate some of these risks, please.
So the risks exist at a number of levels. Now I'll be careful what I say in an open environment because members of the public who would be watching this webcast will otherwise be privy to the details of the security arrangements that we have in place. But nonetheless, needless to say, we would have security arrangements in place at the level of data coming into this organisation. So that would be at a firewall level. You'd be familiar with that term from your own experiences of having used the internet. We would have security measures in place at the level of our systems, and I talked earlier about the migration of our systems from hosted environments to the cloud. That has included a number of security measures. We would have security measures in place in terms of the awareness of our staff using systems. So there are training, and we run exercises to test our resilience in that space. And finally, and importantly, we have a number of measures that exist within the hardware that we use as officers. So there's a reason that we all use the same devices or variants of the same device. And that is because we have procured these with inbuilt security, which is above and beyond the level of security that you would expect to have if you purchased a machine as a private individual. So for example, if this machine was lost or damaged or stolen, all of the data on this machine can be removed remotely instantly. It's encrypted, it's not easy to access. That isn't always the case with a privately purchased piece of equipment. It's for that reason, and recognising that councillors are also data users in law, and you are data controllers in law, and you are liable for the information that you hold about residents, that we have been recommending through the working group that we've been holding a shift to using council issued equipment so that you get access to all of the layers of protection that I've just outlined. We are, we understand the issues that have been raised with us. Certainly the last time that the matter was discussed here in the last municipal year, and as a result of that, we've been exploring options for a range of different devices that could be deployed. So certainly we will have in the range of options available to you a laptop that will be similar to the one that's in front of me now, but we would also have available to you smaller devices and more mobile devices if that best suits the need of the individual user. So tablet type devices you may be familiar with, all the way down to phone devices, sized devices. We intend to explore that a little bit more at the next workshop before coming forward with a policy proposal.
Thank you. Just so we can further the discussion on from a point of proper knowledge, what I'd actually like to suggest is that we move to exclude the public and press for a while, just so we can then discuss openly what the nature of these risks are, and and then we can kind of speak a little bit more freely, and our officers can tell us. Any objections to that? Okay, so just formally, I'm going to move that to consider excluding the public and press from the meeting during consideration of the following item of business on the grounds that it is likely that if members of the public or press were present during consideration of the item, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined by paragraphs 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and the public interest in maintaining this exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Turson, thank you very much. So, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, so we'll end the webcast and we'll come back live after we've discussed. And maybe we'll take a comfort break as well.
I'm out.
You're out. Does your old woman know?
We're not live, are we?
Still are.
Still on?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Okay, so what we need
Okay, so we're back live, having concluded that part 2 discussion. So let's hand over to Mr. Young to conclude his report.
Thank you, Chair. So we already covered on page 38 the procurement pipeline. Members will recall we did that as the first update, and then that takes you onto the last pages of the highlight report, which is at pages 21 and onwards. On these pages, Chair, we have the performance indicators that are covered by this Overview and Scrutiny Commission. What we've tried to do in this report is to link the performance indicator to the corporate plan outcome that is helping to deliver. We've got the data listed over the quarters in the columns or months, if that's appropriate, and then we've got an arrow at the end indicating whether the trend is up or down. Members can ask questions about that. And then just at the bottom of the report, we've got it's the table that explains how we did the red, amber and green rating for the risks. So, Chair, I'll pause there in case there are any questions on the performance indicators. Thank you.
Councillor Gascoigne.
Procurement, a couple of things there. Did want to highlight positives for procurement pipeline, which seems like a broadly positive thing. If you have a few comments on that, just a comment maybe just for the sake of speed. And then I've noticed quite a lot of these arrows are down and down in not a good way. I was just wondering if you could shed a bit more light on that. Thank you very much.
Is there one that you want to? Because we cover them between us. We cover different ones between us. So it's probably, if you don't mind picking one.
If I had to pick one, we'll go for the second one. Safeguard those who are vulnerable, less would help themselves. That appears to be down.
So external hardship payments, that's what allocations you give to vulnerable individuals, support them in certain circumstances with their council tax payments. So we have a certain allocation that we get annually, and we will give that out in entirety during the financial year. It's just a profile of when those allocations have been made. So that's just the allocations. That particular bit have been lower, but they will be paid out across the year.
So essentially, even though that's down currently, that doesn't mean any of our residents are going to miss out necessarily. Thank you for that clarity.
Okay, I think we've done that item to death now, so we can move on to agenda item 5, which is Financial Inclusion and Resilience Policy 2024 to 2027.
Thank you, Chair. So if I can introduce that. So members of the committee will remember we brought in the first financial inclusion resilience policy really as a result of COVID, and really that highlighted some of the key support we were giving to residents. And on the back of that, we launched the cost of living working group that members attended. We did various reports and activities that are undertaken there. What this report does is really it brings that up to date, and it reflects, obviously coming out of COVID, the continuing financial vulnerability of residents, especially resulting in some of the, financial crisis, increased utility bills, and the various increased inflation and various things that have been going on during the year. It sets out really, some key metrics around financial vulnerability across the borough. And what that really does, it highlights the fact that financial vulnerability is not a new thing. It's something we were dealing with before COVID, and obviously for certain sections of the community, it's a continuing thing, and it's something that is really now being, to a major extent, really encompassed as business as usual. The report sets out some of the other key policies that underline some of those activities we do at the moment, things like the customer policy, discretionary policy. A good example of that was the performance indicator we just spoke about a minute ago, the exceptional hardship payments, which again is a BAU activity that really supports financially vulnerable people. Obviously, we spoke before about some of the key activities we did around the community bus, around the community hub that we've spoken about before at this meeting. This really at a high level consolidates those activities into the BAU activities we do at the moment. It's really spread across the council and various departments who work together lots of stuff by Shannon's team, with housing, with Grant and the communities team, just sets that in context.
Thank you very much. No, it was a good report. It was interesting to read, a little depressing in places, I have to say. So, I mean, just with regards to pages 58 and 59, couple of the challenges that are faced by our residents and what the council can kind of do to ease people's lives with these regards. Now, I'm specifically referring to employment, and more specifically the challenge around the kind of the difference between the jobs that are available, okay, and the education of our residents, and the mismatch there, that we've got actually some quite high income jobs in the borough, but they aren't being they're not being filled by people from within the borough because we don't have that educational base to meet that demand. So I understand that education isn't the remit of this council, but I know that we work in partnership with Essex. So has there been any discussions about what is what we're looking to do to improve that? Because education is the key to anything, really. If you can improve educational outcomes, everything else kind of clicks into place. So, as I say, what discussions have been had with county? What are we doing in house to try and address some of these issues? Also, something that does come a little bit more into our remit under health. We've got some quite poor health outcomes in this borough as well. But I'm always being bombarded, on social media and so on with things that we're doing to improve that. Wellness schemes that we advertise. I'm always being told to find my active, although I always seem to find it in KFC. So, so don't know how well that one's going. We've just launched a new swimming pool in Pitsea. So that these are all things that should hopefully improve health outcomes for our residents. So what evidence have we got that these efforts that we've been going through are actually having a positive effect in improving this?
Thank you. In terms of notable outcomes, a lot of these interventions take time to be able to measure, but the council is very committed in terms of working in partnership. So as you know, we're co-located with Department of Work and Pensions, and we do lots of work around employment fair. We do a lot of work in terms of readiness back to work and the skills level that needs to be in place for that. The Advice Store, which we are very, very proud of, continues to work with a number of organisations across the borough, working about how we can fit individuals. We are very happy to be launching the Creative Tech Fest, so looking at how we bring in more technical roles into the borough or be able to fill those roles that are open in the borough, and that's going to be on the 10th of February. So there's a number of initiatives. We don't just think about, how we deal with issues at a point in time. We look at how we raise skills and aspirations, and we put people into contact with the college and employment in terms of apprenticeships. So we are very, very active in that partnership, and as Owen said, we treat that very much as our business as usual. We are very committed to work in partnership with those that can help us wrap that improved skill based around those that live in our borough.
Yeah, because another one of the points that really kind of surprised me was that some of the residents on the lowest kind of incomes, one of the effects that being on a low income has means you actually pay less attention or you put less effort into your work because of the stresses and so you end up in this vicious cycle that because you're not putting that effort into your work, you're less likely to get the promotion, you're less likely to get out of that situation that you're in. So there was a lot of very interesting points there, and I'm glad to hear that we're sort of taking actions to address some of those. Okay, Councillor Gascoigne, you've got questions.
So on page 56, 57, we talk about the deprivation ranks, indices of multiple deprivation, and in particular, Free and St Martin's, Pitsea North West and Lee Chapel North, 80% to 100% of households move into this category. As a Pitsea North West councillor, it would be I would need to ask the question, what specifically are we doing to help alleviate, relieve or improve that situation, in addition to what the chairman has already mentioned? Thank you.
We might need to do a bit of a tag team here. So there's various things we do. So, for example, we've got our new community bus. So we go to deprived, hard to reach areas. And what we do, as an example, we go with partners, DWP, debt advice, sort of health advice, try and support people and reach the most hard to reach areas. And it is about targeting areas as well. So obviously, one, encouraging people to contact us, and when we do, we can support them for the CRC. We can refer them to our community outreach team to try and support them in their wider needs. So what you often find is if someone's behind on their rent, they may be behind on their council tax. We may be able to help them to support to maximise the benefit uptake. So we can target individuals and try to help them that wide holistic way. And that's something sort of Shannon with Rob and her team are really trying to focus on, so we can really help people make that step change.
Does that answer your questions? Any others? No? Okay, so that concludes that item. So we move on to agenda item 6, which is the review of the council's petition scheme. So just before we get into the detail on this item, I just want to point out, I think this is actually, up to this point, you know, could be famous last words, it's actually been an example of, I think, really good scrutiny in this organisation. This item was suggested to us by Councillor Davis at full council when we were looking at the petition scheme in general. You know, he pointed out, a valid observation of the way we could improve it. We had it was a couple of weeks ago now. I think we had an online meeting where we kind of discussed what it is he was looking to achieve. And officers have gone off and done the research on that, and I think it's a really good example of cross-party scrutiny and involvement and cooperation. So I was very pleased to see that. So I'll hand over for the report, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So, at full council meeting on the 14th of December, it was resolved that the Overview and Scrutiny Commission be asked to give further consideration on the acceptance of online petitions other than through the council's own website. To keep it brief, we've done a lot of research on this, and in principle, it's felt there's no reason why this shouldn't be permitted, as it would provide further ways for communities to engage with the council. All it will require is a few minor amendments to our existing petition scheme to allow the functionality for it to happen. In looking at the petition scheme and considering this new way of allowing external petition platforms to be used by lead petitioners, there's a few suggestions in here on pages 66 to 67 on some further adjustments to our existing petition scheme, just so that everything can run smoothly. So the first one is the requirement for petitioners to provide a name and address. At the moment, you can submit a petition through the e-petitions facility, or you can do a paper version. And there's some slight inconsistencies there just in terms of the information you need to provide. So one emphasises that you have to tick to say you live, work or study in the borough. And you don't necessarily have to, it doesn't indicate strongly enough that you have to provide an address that relates to live, work or study in the borough. Whereas the paper copy, you have to provide an address in there, but there's no requirement to tick whether you live, study, work in the borough. So we just want to tighten that up so there's a consistency. Obviously, if we move over to allowing external petition platforms to host petitions and for those to be submitted from there, it'd be very important to make sure that it's clear that the people that sign those petitions show that link and demonstrate that link to the borough through the provision of a full name, signature and their address. So that would ordinarily be a postcode for a borough address. So just some wording there that could be incorporated. In terms of hosting petitions, it's going to be on a platform that's national. So we want to make it very clear that when people go on there, that the petitions relate to Basildon Borough Council, not just a council, because not everybody's going to be familiar with democratic process. So I've just suggested some wording there just to make it very clear that it's Basildon Council the petitions will be going through to. And it's also about putting the responsibility of making sure that any petitions that are coming forward to the council, that they are the responsibility of the lead petitioner to make sure they comply with the requirements of the council. We don't want to be making adjustments for specific platforms because those platforms might not be around in a few years' time. They might change, they might do all sorts of things. So again, it's about opening the system up so that people can use whichever format is most appropriate for them, but making sure that they're very aware of what we expect when it comes through to us as a council. And to accommodate the online petition platforms, we'd need an email address, because when that petition is done, say for example on change.org or something like that, when the petition concludes, the lead petitioner will go on, download their petition with all their information. They'll need to email that across to us as a council for us to process that. We also make reference in here regarding duplicate petitions. So if we're going to host petitions on platforms, external, so not our e-petitions platform, there's a risk that we've got different petitions running all at the same time that all might relate to one same issue. So we don't want to be setting ourselves up for having lots of competing petitions. And we're just saying how we could deal with that if that was a situation that arose. So yeah, it's for members to consider the existing petition scheme and consider the suggestions that I've put forward in the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, I do have some questions. I think in principle, and as we discussed at the meeting, I'm very much in favour of petitions. May not always like the subjects of them, but I think it's one of the relatively few ways members of the public have of directly addressing policy issues and potentially addressing this council. So I want to kind of encourage them, and the greater engagement people can have, the better. So more than happy to if we can widen how we can accept, or widen the net as to what petitions we can accept. Now, with regards to third-party hosts, so I won't mention any sort of names. We all kind of know the sites that run these. I sort of run a little test petition of my own the other day, just to sort of see what information came through on signatories, and the most I could get was just simply a postcode, and I note that on the agenda here, just above it says, as a minimum, we have to have a postcode and a house number. So, in order to allow that, presumably we're going to have to loosen up that requirement. So there's no kind of legal block to us doing that. That's our own kind of rule, and we can adjust that.
Yeah, so all we need to be able to evidence, according to our existing petition scheme, is that relevance to the borough. So a postcode would be sufficient. We don't need to necessarily know someone's door number per se, but as long as there's that link to the borough and they've given their name and such like, then that would be sufficient.
Okay, and so we wouldn't need lots of resources to have to then go and check every address in a postcode to find that person. We would just take that as evidence that it's relevant.
Often what you'd do is you'd run the postcodes provided through a database, like a mapping system, and it would generate and show you that where the postcodes are within the boundaries of the borough, how many of those are there, and the ones obviously that are outside of that would be excluded for the purposes of the number count. Obviously, there is a requirement you can check with people that have signed a petition to make sure they are legitimate, that they are people that exist, but you could do that via that process because they would have provided their contact details.
Okay, so moving on to the point we sort of made about the responsibility of the petitioner to follow our guidelines. At the moment, clunky as it is, when we use, if a petitioner uses the e-petitions website on the council's website, when they set up that petition, all of those guidelines are available to them. They're there, so they know exactly what's expected of them. When they, for example, set up the kind of the mission statement of the petition, there will be guidelines that says what requirements that has to meet. My concern will be that if we are allowing third-party providers to third party hosts for these petitions, you're not going to get any of that guidance. You're just going to go to their website. So if I didn't know anything, I might feel strongly about an issue and say, right, I'm going to start up a petition. What's the first place I go to? The website I won't mention. Okay, I set something up. I spend hours, days, weeks pushing it, publicising it, getting signatures. Okay, I hit those thresholds that I need to, or get as many signatures as I can. I feel very proud of myself. I then come to the council and go, there you go, what are you going to do about that? And we say, well, absolutely nothing, because it doesn't meet this requirement, it doesn't meet that requirement. I'm like, well, I didn't know that. I think there was nothing there to sort of tell me what I had to get, and that would worry me, because, as I say, residents will have put a lot of effort into it, and I would be worried if we're basically bumping people off on a technicality. No, not literally bumping them off, but that's one way to solve a problem. But no, as I say, just sort of say, no, sorry, go away, you don't meet our requirements. At the moment, that problem's addressed by using the council website, wouldn't be with the, with external providers. So, and likewise, when we mentioned duplicate petitions, at the moment, if somebody sets up a petition that's already active on our website, it's very easy to see that there's two petitions on almost identical subjects, and we could probably then, at a very early stage, inform one or the other petitioners and say there's already, this is already happening. When they're being held in complete isolation from each other, again, how are we going to manage that? We're going to say, again, somebody's carried out maybe a valid petition, they've met the requirements, and then come back and say, oh, we just had one of those handed in to us a couple of days ago. So what's going to then happen to that petition? Can they be joined together? Or do we have to just say one's already been received? So unfortunately, you're going to have to go. I'm just worried about telling residents no, we won't accept their petition when they were not in possession of all of the knowledge required to meet our requirements.
Okay, quite a few things to come back on there. So in terms of if someone goes off somewhere and starts a petition without considering what the requirements are of the council, I've had a look at a number of the other petition platforms, and they all state that you should engage with your decision maker ahead of formalising your petition, because depending on where you want to send your petition, the rules vary. If it's to national government, local government, it could be to a private company. So the expectation is on that person to check what is required. Yeah. Part of the things that they talk about on their websites is trying to make the petition successful, and the way to make that successful is to make sure you know what the requirements are of that decision maker. Also, obviously, we would have that on our website. So when someone's thinking, I think I want to do a petition, how do I go about that? So we'd explain on there how you go about it and the different ways that you can do that. So you have the paper, you have the e-petition, you can email in, you can sort out a petition on an external platform if you so choose. In terms of duplicate petitions, obviously there's a risk of that happening at the moment, because you can use the e-petition facility, and you could also have people going around doing paper copies as well. So the allowing an external platform to host them is kind of secondary to this particular issue. I think at the moment what we need to have is just a clear process on how we would deal with duplicate petitions. And I've put a form of wording in here. It's basically, if we get lots of petitions coming in from all different people, what we would do is we refer them to the lead petitioner of the first petition that comes in. And if they're all in agreement, I don't see why there would be any reason that they can't be consolidated if necessary. And if they come in different formats, the whole point of petitions is for issues to be raised to. We're not trying to be prohibitive. We're just trying to have in place a process that's manageable. So that wouldn't necessarily be an issue. We wouldn't say it's that format or it's that format. We can work with that.
That was actually going to be my next question. So, as we know, not everyone's online. Mm-hmm. So we may have a situation where somebody's carrying out a petition, but they maybe want to go door to door as well. For people who can't sign online. Yeah. We will have something in place to sort of say, look, I've got X number of people who have signed on the e-petition, and now I've got X number on paper. can we join them together? Because they are essentially the same petition, just done across two votes. So we'll have something in place to address that as well.
Sure. If you agree the wording that's set out in the report, you'd like to put that forward to full council, then we can amend the petitions scheme to reflect that request.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Yacoub.
Thank you. So currently with the e-petition on the council website, does it require people to log into their council account in order to sign the petition? And secondly, if, for example, so on external petition websites, it is optional. So the most you normally have to provide is your email address. You don't have to put your postcode in. Does that then mean that if that was put forward to us, we would just disregard those signatories because they haven't provided a postcode? Because, you know, a lot of the times when there's so many petitions, I think one of the things with petitions that I find quite frustrating is there's always a petition going around. So it's like, you know, you're going there, you're doing the bare minimum most of the time just to tick it and pass it along. So people might not spend that time to put in a postcode and that extra detail. And then secondly, how would we verify it? Will we be able to run it by our database to say this is the full name of the person and this is the postcode they've put in, to make sure that, you know, that person is a real person that lives within the borough?
So just a couple of points there. So in terms of being able to set up an e-petitioner, it's for the lead petitioner to create an account with the council and set up the e-petition. They can then share that on social media and such like, and people can go in and log their signature, provide their name and such like. So yes, there is a requirement to buy into the council's system with your details and things. In terms of e-petitions and if people don't provide the necessary information, I've looked into that as well. There is a possibility with some platforms whereby if, for example, the lead petitioner has made a bit of a mistake, so they've set up the petition, they didn't make it clear that people had to say they lived in the borough, and they've got to the end of it and they've realised, oh, I've made a bit of an error. What they can then do is they can create a Google form on that platform, and they can send a message to all the people that have signed that petition to say, look, I want to put it forward to this decision maker, and in order to be able to do that, I need you to agree that you're happy to put forward your personal details, like your name and address. And it's then for the signatory to say, yes, I want to do that, or no, I don't want to do that. And then they can also, again, download that file and accompany that to the petition. So there is a little bit of a get-out clause if they make that mistake in the first instance. And in terms of verifying petitions, it's really down to how kind of strict you want to be. Do you want to check every single name and address on a petition? Is that the best use of resources? Or do you want to kind of go through and just, you know, pick out 100 at random if there's, say, 1,000 petitions, 1,000 signatories on there? And the things you'd be looking for is lots of the same address with names that perhaps, you know, don't account for that. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, all living at the same house. That would be a clear sign that it's been added to. It'd be things like that that would jump out at us that we'd be looking for. Will we go and knock on someone's house just to check that Mr. Smith lives at this address? No, we wouldn't be doing that. So it's about striking that balance between, you know, encouraging the democratic process and also having some checks and balances that isn't been exploited. Now that's for members to make a judgment as to how far you want to go with that. But I would suggest that, you know, having a look through the petition, checking to make sure those postcodes are in the borough would give us a good understanding of how many of those people have signed it. So that would be my suggestion there.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't provisionally see anything wrong with it, and if it gives you any, relief, if someone decides to set up their own paper petition, they get their particulars wrong, then they should have gone on the council website and checked. Could have spoken to a councillor. I mean, that is a typical thing, isn't it? I remember when I first won my county seat, there was that terrible accident that led to a tragedy in Dry Street, and the residents there got 5,000 signatures up to try and cut the speed limit, but regrettably, county council would rather fill up body bags than listen to the people than amend their rules with highway safety. But that resident, with such a very passionate campaign, done their basic homework, and I think that's down to people. You can't just stand, what I'm trying to say is you can't just stand in a town centre, back of a cereal box, here, sign that petition to get the bins back being weekly. You know, people have got good sense, and I think we just need to trust the public a bit. But where we have regrettably, and we might split hairs on this, refuse the opposition their right to as many motions as they like. You may recall the pearls of wisdom from former Borough Councillor Malcolm Buckley when he said when he was just one member on his own in the 90s that Labour would second his motion. They might disagree, but they believed in his right to table motions. That leads us to another situation. Now, I'm sure we've had these emails either from the RSPCA or this group that probably me and them are not on the same page about this plant-based treaty. I might have sent that to the EU when they was trying to do Brexit, but you've all had those emails. Will you make Basildon Council sign up to a plant-based treaty council with a motion? Well, if this passes tonight, which I'm sure it will, we can now say to residents, I'm ever so sorry my group's been curtailed to 2 or 3 motions a year. That's if the mayor will allow it. So he wants to get back on his moped. Why don't you table an online petition? And I think that would be helpful to opposition members. I mean, obviously, after May, we'll change it and go back to the democratic system with motions, which you'll appreciate. But we do get emails from residents, could you table a motion on this and a motion on that? And having an electronic petition system may help with those queries. But you've all had them dotty ones about a plant-based treaty. Why anyone would ask me to nominate, I don't know. Don't know. But hey-ho. Only got £1.50 in my pocket.
Okay, Councillor Turson.
Thank you. I just wanted to start off with actually thanking Councillor Davis for bringing this up because, again, I think as we've all said tonight, petitions are a great way for the residents to have their voices heard, and that should be our number one function as ward councillors or councillors to listen to what our residents want and act on it. Very simple question is, have we ever had this brought up or has a online petition ever been submitted to the council from outside our system that we run at the minute?
No, I don't believe we've had one hosted elsewhere that has been dealt with, but I can look into that with Democratic Services and come back to you.
Councillor Davies.
Thank you. I just want to say, when this came to full council, and I was ploughing away through it diligently, I recall when I was had my other hat on, Essex County Council, we got a petition running up about Freehan's Library and Vange Library, and it was then that I realised that Change.org and that Essex County Council would freely accept those petitions as well. So that is when it became easier accessible for the public to get onto Change.org and put their vote down about Vange and Freehan's Library. And that was submitted to Essex County Council with hard, paper copies, and Essex County Council collated from all the councillors until it got into hundreds of thousands, and they were able to sort of progress that way. So to me, it was a very sort of straightforward process, and hopefully through our discussions here, we can go ahead and agree that we should be able to make sure that this is another avenue for democratic provision for the public in order to make their voices heard. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so do we need to have a vote on this? No. So we just take our comments and take them on board. But yeah, just an expression. Yeah, I'm in favour of this based on the discussions that we've had. Any strong objections? No. So okay, fantastic. So we'll take all of that feedback and move that forward then, hopefully. Okay, so after all that, we are approaching the end, and we are now on to item 7, the work programme. Do we have any items that anyone would like to see added to the work programme? We've already discussed adding the website kind of briefing, so we'll get that. And update on the new telephony system. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I think we hit a good one earlier. I think we need to look at accessibility to this building and other council services to people who've got disabilities. I mean, if you look on that screen there, used to be a white box, black letters. If you're colourblind, you go, who's this Smith guy? You know, it's little things like that. I mean, could we have one of those QR codes outside the building? So if English wasn't your first language or you had a disability, you could just wave the phone at the QR code and talk to people that way. They're making the building far more accessible. We have a library here, you know, births and deaths registration. You know, you've got signs, but we assume everyone speaks English perfectly, reads perfectly, and there's no disabilities. You know, the Alliance works hard putting that changing places toilet downstairs. So I think that would just complement that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see a problem. It's kind of tied into some discussions we've had previously, isn't it, with the accessibility and inclusion and so on. So, yeah, did you want?
I asked Chair if we could align it into the customer policy, because we will be bringing an updated policy that will be going to Cabinet in the new municipal year, so we can bring it as part of that, because we will be looking at our customer interactions with the council overall.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, a bit old-fashioned. Can we refer to residents, even not by resident, but as taxpayers? Because, like I said earlier, if you were customers with the bin service, no disrespect, you take your business elsewhere, but you've got no choice, because if you don't pay your council tax, you get 30 days in the nick.
Okay. Do you want to respond to that one? No? Right, so that concludes the work programme items, and concludes the... Oh, by the way, I do agree. Black on grey text is a bad design choice. So, yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, okay, so, that concludes the meeting. Thank you, everyone.